Hello, hello, Jordan Sheridan live. Status Coup, Tuesday, December the 19th, in the unholy year of 2023, in the United Corporations of America. Delighted to be joined by the wise, sage, glasses wearing Stephen Grumbine, Real Progressives co founder. Steve, how's it been?
It's been okay, man. It's been okay. Just trying to muddle through the existing world as we know it, watching all the hell break loose. It's if you're paying attention, it'll take a toll.
Yeah, yeah. I recently broke not one, but two of my toes. So I've been hobbling around with a 13-month-old who now apparently wants to play with my broken toes. So that's been fun.
This
Uh,
little piggy.
yeah, it's healing up. I should be back in action and able to walk normally within the next 2 weeks. But that has not slowed us down. I don't know if you saw John Farina covering the
Yeah.
another protest yesterday. Just so happened that Alec Baldwin was taking a stroll. Thank God it wasn't a movie set. Nobody was killed. But Alec Baldwin had some things to say to some pro-Palestinian protesters, so we'll show that. John's been doing great work for us. He's covered at least at this point, I don't know, 7, 8 of these protests, and we'll continue to cover them. We also have Biden. I think an animation is ready. We'll show in a little bit of the neoliberal bubble bursting. Colin, we're going to try to make some new animations for the new year. Biden is apparently very, very angry at his staff, not himself, at his staff for his low polling numbers. As of now, if the election were held today, we would have another Trump presidency, if you could believe that. So we'll have that and more good news on the UAW union front. So we're going to get into all that. But on a grim note, let's start with the continued slaughter, genocide, horrific scenes out of Gaza. I don't really know how to accurately describe the numbers. I think it's well over 20,000 Palestinians have died. That's not to mention the wounded, those who are still alive, but mentally and physically wounded. And we're just trucking along in America, the government, I should say, supporting this. I shall say I can't really compliment Ronald Reagan on many things, but when Israel bombed the hell out of Lebanon in 1982, Reagan put an end to it, and Israel stopped. That's I can't remember ever crediting Reagan with anything, but that was a good thing. But Biden continues to stand by Israel. If you look at just the latest headlines, details emerge. Let me find this. Hold on. I lost my spot here. IDF accused of running over dead bodies with a bulldozer outside of a Gaza hospital. So this happened a couple days ago. Let me get bulldozer. It's from NBC. Israeli military is accused of crushing cadavers with a bulldozer outside the Kamal Adwan hospital during a raid in Gaza, according to the Ministry of Health and a journalist. Al Jazeera's Agnes Al-Sharif posted a video to social media walking around the hospital's complex following an IDF raid, describing a terrible stench and body parts strewn in the debris. He said that witnesses said displaced people and injured patients were among the dead. This is the body of one of the injured patients who were inside the hospital. The bulldozers drove over them and left, the journalist told NBC. The Gaza Ministry of Health alleged that the IDF dug a hole and dumped the bodies in it using a bulldozer. I don't even think you could really script that up in one of the worst dystopian horror flicks. So that is just one of the emerging horror stories. Then you have Pope Francis is condemning the IDF killed 2 women who were at a Gaza church. The Pope is calling it terrorism. This is from the Washington Post. Pope Francis condemned the killing of 2 women sheltering at a church in the Gaza Strip, appealing on Sunday for an end to the war. a sniper from the IDF shot the women, quote, without warning and in, quote, cold blood Saturday. The Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem, an ecclesiastical, sorry if I'm mispronouncing, office.
Ecclesiastical.
Thank you. You're classing it up. Office for the Latin Catholics in the region. The two were sheltering at the Holy Family Parish, where the majority of Christian families in Gaza have taken refuge, identifying the women as Nahida Khalil Antan and her daughter Samar Kamal Antan. Pope Francis said there were no terrorists at the Catholic parish and that it is hosting families, nuns, and those who are sick. Quote, some are saying this is terrorism and war. Yes, it is war. It is terrorism. So that's the Pope. And I want to show this clip. This, I guess, is an aide, senior aide to Netanyahu. He's been all over CNN, MSNBC, basically says the same thing over and over again. He tries to kind of muddy the waters, say, well, we don't know who killed these people. It could have been Hamas. This was him responding to this sniper killing two Palestinian women. It's pretty disgraceful what he said. This is the Sky News clip, if you could play it, Colin.
So I would reject the categorization of the words he used, cold-blooded killing. That would indicate a deliberate targeting of civilians. That's something we don't do. We don't shoot people who are going to church to pray. It just doesn't happen. That's not the way the IDF operates. That's against our rules of engagement. We don't know exactly what happened, and I would urge people not to jump to conclusions. There have been in the past all sorts of stories put out by Hamas and their supporters accusing Israel of all sorts of terrible deeds, and in the end they've proved to be wrong. And we're talking about a combat area. There's exchanges of fire between Israeli forces and the Hamas terrorists. To say that Israel is deliberately targeting Christian worshippers, that's a terrible accusation that is unfounded.
Would you acknowledge, Mr. Regev, that the bullets that killed these women were fired by the IDF?
I do not know that to be true. Obviously, we're looking into it. Could they have been killed by Palestinian terrorists who were shooting at our people indiscriminately? I don't know. But we've got to be very careful. There've been countless stories since this conflict began, where reports out of Gaza, people are 100% sure that Israel did something terrible or this, that, or the other. And in the end, it's been proven conclusively that that was not the case. And people have had to retract their words. Unfortunately, some have refused.
So, I mean, all you got to look at is this happened last year, I believe, where the IDF shot and killed Palestinian journalists. I'm blanking on her name, so sorry, don't mean to offend. Was a very, very infamous, legendary Palestinian journalist. Colin, if you can get me the name, Shirin, I think was her name. And you heard basically the same things at first. Someone in the IDF, not him, claiming, well, like, we think it was Hamas or Palestinian terrorists who shot at her. And, you know, once investigation was done, it was the IDF who shot this Palestinian journalist. So your thoughts on, you got bulldozers bulldozing over patients. You have snipers shooting at women going to church. And that's not even mentioning the devastating news that the IDF shot and killed 3 of its own hostages.
I think we already know what Israel's modus operandi is. I mean, this is not, let's make sure we do not conflate the idea of Jews versus Zionists versus this right-wing government. And they're disgusting, Nazi-like, let's use the words, IDF. But I got to tell you, one of the things that's really jumping out at me, because we've already seen so much death and carnage throughout this period of time since the beginning of October. I mean, this has been horrible, nonstop. But here we are right now. You got guys like that walking out with the nice tie, well-dressed, very calm, because, of course, they're the adult in the room. And they use that because the people on the other side are out of their minds, just screaming. They're desperate. They're freaking out because they're around death everywhere. And they use this kind of tone policing. They use this kind of set and setting to make sure that people say, See, calm, cool heads. Listen to him. He's so credible. He looks like us. He looks like a really smart guy. Of course, they're not doing that. That guy doesn't look like he'd take a bulldozer and run over dead bodies. Why not even possibly not quite dead bodies? Not quite dead bodies out there. Literally, I guarantee you that the truth is obscured nonstop by these very, very flagrant uses of well-to-do people putting out the tone policing, putting out the, how dare you say we did this? And it substantiate any one of the things that jackass said when he said, everything they've ever said has been proven wrong and they've had to take it back. I gotta tell you, I haven't seen anything proven wrong that's had to be taken back. In fact, I've seen nothing but nonstop proof that Israel is committing genocide, that Israel knows it's committing genocide, and Israel don't care that it's committing genocide because Mama and Papa USA doesn't care that it's committing genocide. So at this point in time, I think it's really important to think about the fact that this is all a messaging thing. This is all about trying to take the high ground, like so many typical centrist Democrats do, the corporate elite do. It's oh yeah, those people out of doors. Listen to them in their unclean language. Listen to them as they rage and yell. They're so uncivilized. Let's go have brunch at Brown University or at Columbia Law, and let's go have a good old time with the rest of the IDF. I think this is more and more and more about positioning human beings, saying, look at these animals, and literally trying to paint everything, all the cries of the suffering out to be as if it's not even human beings. They're not even human beings doing this stuff. And I think that that is literally their MO.
I also think if you look at, I think there's a lot of parallels, frankly, between the United States imperialism, police terrorism, and what you're seeing in Israel. And it makes sense. And it makes sense because they train together. I mean, Cop City, which our Tina Desiree Berg covered on the ground twice this year. By the way, Status Coup viewers, we are trying to put together, which Steve will be invited to, put it in your calendar and smoke it, Saturday, December 30th. Saturday, December 30th, a marathon live stream highlighting our on-the-ground reporting of 2023. Yes, push for memberships, donations, but kind of a celebration of Status Coup on the ground because we continue to be the independent outlet on the ground consistently. So Saturday, December 30th, don't have the details yet. It'll be in the afternoon, probably 4 or 5 hours, rotating hosts, guests. So we'll have that. We'll definitely highlight our UAW coverage, East Palestine, obviously our on the ground coverage of the protests over this. But what I was saying is Cop City, which has been so controversial down in Georgia, which is not a police training center, it's a fucking police terrorism compound. There were reports that they were going to be training with Mossad and IDF, the Georgia police traders. And what you see in America, which for the last 20, 30 years has been this basically the militarization of police, almost like, you're under attack. This is war. Shoot first, ask questions later. Same thing with shooting these hostages, literally waving white flags, the international sign for surrender. Sure, devil's advocate could say, well, Jordan, it's easy to, confuse things, this and that. Well, that's why you don't shoot first and ask questions later. But there is this sick, psychopathic mentality in America, and I believe within the IDF, that these aren't human beings. They are a threat. And if you feel any threat, if there's any doubt, use the bulldozer. Shoot first. And I think it's actually, if you are a Jew, which I am, and if you care about the safety of Israelis, which I do, it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. This is all making Israel far less safe because this, you think Hamas is bad. Wait till the next generation of Hamas, which is going to be a lot of the people who just saw their brothers and fathers and wives and kids slaughtered in genocide. They're going to come for revenge. And I don't know if you could really blame them. I also want to show Steve, don't just take it from me. And if any of my family is watching who don't like this kind of talk from me, because I love you, but they are Zionists, take it from the former Prime Minister of Israel. The former Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Olmert. He's calling them terrorists. He's calling Netanyahu and his little war cabinet butchers, terrorists. Colin, let's play that clip.
Let it be clear, Netanyahu is a national historical disaster for Israel. He has to go. Ben Gvir is a terrible event. Smotrich is a terrible event. The Hilltop Youth in the territories, in the West Bank, is a terrible event. What I think about Ben Gvir and his friends, I've spelled out in Israel, not in Turkey. In Israel, in front of them, in the most extreme manner. I call them enemies. I say that they are butchers, that they are killers, they are murderers, they are terrorists. I said it on my own people, on my own minister. Since 2009, the Israeli policy was absolutely negative, was not really prepared to embark on a meaningful process that was essential. They have not followed the policy that I've outlined, which carried a real chance for peace. And I don't release the Israeli government from 2009 of its responsibility for the lack of communication. I think that he's a danger to Israel, that he should be immediately fired, that he should be thrown out, that his bedtime, because of many reasons which have nothing to do with Palestinians.
That's not like a political opponent of Netanyahu or an up-and-comer. That's the former prime minister saying he's a historical disgrace. I would go further back. He says the policy since 2009 has not been good. Hasn't been good since, I would say, 1967, but whatever. He's calling him a historical disgrace. And just so you know, Ben Gvir is the far right, like think, I don't know, Lindsey Graham times 10 in America or John McCain times 10. Far, far right national security minister in Israel. So he's an ally of Netanyahu, and he's calling them terrorists and butchers. And listen, I think on October 7th, Israel had the sympathy of the world, and they lost it in a day. But this is Israeli leaders are saying this, not me, not Steve. I don't really know if Biden, forget the election, but just if Biden has 1 ounce of concern or moral integrity for life, at a certain point, you're going to have to pull the blank check.
Yeah. I'm telling you right now, I listen to that and I'm saying, if anybody can watch what's happening and listen to that and then still come back and say Israel's in the right for doing this stuff, they're insane. And I got to just say this, Jordan, if I had my foot on your neck and your face was in a mud puddle and you were gasping for air and you reached in your back pocket and grabbed a knife and shoved it right in my junk, you would not be a terrorist. You would not be committing a crime, in my opinion. You would be doing what anyone struggling to survive has a right to do. And in this case, we could sit there and talk about Hamas and we can talk about, but over all this time, the death, the theft of people's homes, the absolute open air prison that they're living in. There is no way in hell that you can tell me that anything they do to try to free themselves of that oppression is somehow or another wrong. At this point in time, if I were trapped and trying to fight for my home like that, and constantly having New Yorkers come in and take their home away from them as they claim their Zionist rights, I would lose my shit. I don't think I could do it without putting someone down. I wouldn't feel the least bit of guilt at this point. Like if somebody did this in your home and your child, You would do the same. Well, I don't want to speak for you, but I know for me, if that happened, I would be fighting for my life, and I
Well,
would
I think
see
it's
no problem with it.
I think and we talked about this last time. We don't agree on this, but I think to the people who did it, yes, I would respond. When you start attacking innocent people, I don't think the slaughter of one set of innocent people creates the conditions to then, or the justification to go slaughter other innocent people. I don't think you could blame the citizens of Israel for the government of Israel and the occupation and the slaughter. You could say they should be doing more, to demand their government pull out of the occupied territories, West Bank, Gaza, this and that. But I don't. To me, I think, yes, there's justification for wanting to retaliate if you're the Palestinians, but I don't think it's effective. I don't think it will bring expedited peace, but I don't think, slaughtering innocent Palestinians, the answer for that is go slaughter innocent Israelis. But I understand, I shouldn't say I understand, because it's never happened to me. It's never happened to you. But from a far back, looking far back, I could understand when you lose your whole family, of course you're going to be lose your mind, lose your heart, lose your soul, and want revenge. Go ahead,
Jordan. Let me stop you. What we watched in both videos, what we read, what we have experienced just so far in this segment of the show, is all about changing and controlling the narrative in favor of Israel. It's all about trying to massage the normies that watch these shows and literally go, oh, okay, Israel's okay. It's all about that. And what I'm trying to suggest here, I don't think anyone targeted children and families in this. I mean, who knows, right? My point is that in the end, if a slave broke into the slave owner's home and set it on fire and the family died, it'd be unfortunate, but I could understand it. I'll leave it at that. That's my point. And so it's not a matter of, is it good or bad? It's neither, whatever. It's like, how do you tell somebody how to fight for their freedom? If they're desperate and they're gasping for air, my point is just simply that this is a massaging of the Israeli position to manipulate and manufacture consent for something that should never be consented to, should never be acceptable. And all I'm suggesting is that the conditions that led to this need to not be ignored, because even to your point, even Omar said, hey, up until 2008, no, we're talking way back, man. This isn't like some, Y2K kind of experience. We're talking about back to the 60s. Right. We're talking about even further back in many cases. So for me, when I hear this, it's like, how many times do we have to go through these? Because the next time there's something that happens, and I hope it doesn't ever happen, but something will happen at some point in the future. Right. And we're going to have to rehash this history again. It's going to be a brand new rehashing of the same history for those that didn't pay attention this time, and for, et cetera. And to remind those that did pay attention this time, hey, this isn't a first time thing. This has been going on. Right. So the question becomes, how do you take human beings that are being treated as if they're animals and present their struggle for survival in a light that doesn't sit there and say, well, they're both wrong? I mean, I get that unfortunate things happened here. What I'm trying to suggest here is simply, I can't bring myself to condemn any action that someone that is oppressed and being snuffed out does in defense of survival, whether that be stealing, whether that be, I don't care what, whether that be murder. I mean, I hate to say it, murder even in this case, right? And I guess my point that I'm making here is that it's very, very easy in our easy chairs to sit there and judge the struggle of someone being oppressed, as opposed to the outrageous backlash from the oppressor.
Well,
and that's where I'm at.
I also think that, I've obviously I don't pretend. I mean, I'm pretty honest that the content and injustice happening within the United Corporations of America is my wheelhouse. I'm no foreign policy expert, sure, but I have researched this over the last couple of weeks. I think it's important to note the Palestinian people, whenever there were peace talks, the Palestinian people, not Hamas, I'm just talking about the people, even within the occupied territories, talking in the 1970s, 80s, 90s, overwhelmingly supported it. So when there were talks of peace between Israel and Palestinians, when there was talk of a Palestinian state, even next to an Israeli one, they supported it. So this whole bullshit that you hear from religious fanatics like Netanyahu, his pals, you know, in the extremist settlers, his pals in the religious Orthodox community that he formed a government with, when you hear that, oh no, whenever we've given them, you know, if we gave them a state, they would just fire rockets. Well, the Palestinian people overwhelmingly support a state for themselves and would even are willing to have it next to Israel. Israel doesn't want that because people like Netanyahu and the very, very similar to the Christian, you know, evangelicals here and the fanatics here, they believe God gave us this land. And they believe that, you know, the Judea and Samaria, my father believes it. A lot of people I know in my life believe it. And just like it's a sickness in America, the merging of these fucking religious zealots with our government, from abortion to you name it, it's a sickness there. And this is not going to end until, frankly, the neoliberal bubble pops in America. Because I don't think if you have a neoliberal Democrat or a neoliberal Republican in the White House, they're ever going to pull that blank check from that sacred cow, which is Israel. Because they could say that they love Israel because it's a democracy in the Middle East. No, that's not why they love Israel. It's because it's a military outpost for America in the Middle East. And it helps our strategic, our geopolitical strategic interests, particularly oil and other natural, you know, resources. But the last thing I'll say on this before we move on is, whether you're Jewish, whether you're Palestinian, whether you're anti-Zionist, pro-Zionist, whether you're pro-Palestinian, whatever you are, the bottom line is, at a certain point, the blame game has to go away. I think there's a lot of blame to go around, but right now, at the end of the day, if you care about Israel, you have to know sometimes just doing something is not the right answer. Look what happened after 9/11. We have to do something. Well, that created a phony war on terror that maimed and killed 500,000 Iraqis, created ISIS, and basically destroyed families in America, killed thousands of U.S. soldiers, wounded tens of thousands of others, the living survivors of their family, the PTSD, the homelessness of soldiers, and has basically created all these splinter groups for fucking nothing other than Dick Cheney's pleasure and Enron stock. And the same thing's happening here. This is not making Israel safer. It's creating a whole new generation and cycle of this. There's no military solution to this. There's no bombs that will be a solution. The only thing is a political solution. I'm not calling for all the Jews to leave Israel and give the whole thing back to Palestine, because if I called for that, we'd have to start calling for a whole lot of other countries to everybody leave, including us, because we're all occupiers in one way. But I am calling the West Bank, Gaza. Israel needs to withdraw from the occupied territories. There needs to be not a less than a state offer, but a full country to the Palestinians of the West Bank, Gaza, whatever is decided upon with East Jerusalem or Jerusalem. Or you have one country with multiple religions and a true democracy. But I worry because you also have a prime minister of Israel who is trying to stay out of prison. And I think as a result, for his own corruption, he is going to continue this until Biden or somebody in the United States listens to the people protests and pulls that blank check. Your final thoughts on this?
Nope, I think you said it very well. My final pitch on this, I guess, at least for this episode, is that as long as the U.S. continues to bankroll all these proxy wars and so forth, you're going to see folks like Biden lose support, period. And as long as Israel continues to do what it's doing to Palestinians, they're going to continue creating new people that hate Israel. And as long as new people hate Israel, there will always be turmoil. Israel is doing their own shooting themselves in the foot. And, I be honest with you, I mean, I think Israel as a entity is whatever. I don't have a feeling for it one way or the other. Israel as a religious state that is apartheid in nature should not exist under those terms, period. I don't believe that any state should exist under such conditions. We saw it in South Africa, differently, but the same. And I'm seeing the same exact thing occur in Israel. I don't think that whatever that is should not exist as it is.
And I also think my final thing on this, and I again draw the comparisons between America and Israel. I think in many ways, the American government, our police force, have become worse than the British.
Absolutely.
We fled.
Way
The
worse.
tyrannical British that we fled because, of lack of freedom, autocracy, all that. The British Army, the Red, they were brutal towards the colonists. I think we've become in many ways equal to, if not worse than them. And if you were a Jew, and, not all Holocausts or genocide involve trains to being gassed. Obviously, that's the one we know. And, I'm not, I think Holocaust is very loosely thrown around, and genocide is often very loosely thrown around. But as a Jew, never again should mean for anyone. And
That's
yes, Israel was provoked. Maybe you and I disagree on, not that Hamas and Palestinians have reason to want revenge, just how they carried it out. But I will say this: when you're bulldozing patients and you're shooting your own hostages who have white flags, and you're shooting at people in or around a church, and name your war crime, are you really better than the Germans?
Not a bit.
Who sent you off on the trains? Because you can't, at a certain point, you can't keep saying, oh, it was an accident. Oh, it's against our, what did he say? Our rules of engagement. You can't keep muddying the waters, when there's a pattern. I want to quickly show this, Steve, get your thoughts, because Alec Baldwin, in fairness, he was not out at this protest. By reports, there was a protest last night we covered in New York City. He was, I guess, walking to an acting class that he teaches, and he just got caught up walking through this protest. Obviously, he, was in headlines because he accidentally shot and killed tragically. I believe there was a director on the set of his movie Rust. But Alec Baldwin very quickly got very, very confrontational with a pro-Palestinian protester last night. We caught this footage during John Farina's live stream for us. Let's show this.
But Boudreaux told us you're not arresting for stickers, and now you have. We've been told before that that's not.
Who talking to you?
Shut up. A million people.
You look out. Do you condemn Israel?
Guys,
You've already got your mind made. What a good question is that, right?
Oh, that's your question.
I'm in Hollywood, so what you say? You ask stupid questions.
Can the media go?
Yo, who the fuck do you think is Israel? Who the fuck is Why'd you recover?
You shut the fuck up.
Let's go fuck you up. Thank you, Alec. Thank you, Alec.
He went on to say he was asked, do you condemn Israel? He said no, but I pray for peace in Gaza, which is your kind of classic, have your cake and eat it too. I'm not going to blame, I don't want to pile on. It's not his fault that he was walking to a class. He didn't need to act like that. He could have just kind of stood there and said, I want to hear more, and maybe listened to what they're protesting about and their concerns. Yes, some people were mocking him and throwing insults about, his deadly snafu on the set of the movie. But I just thought, man, two things. Number one, he's not an exception. There's a lot of that going on among Hollywood actors privately. You don't see it on camera, to their wives and their agents and, others. And two, when he says, this is kind of, Alec Baldwin is very symbolic of many actors, athletes, and powerful people in America. There is kind of a unwritten rule. If you criticize Israel, you're going to lose you're going to be cut from the agency. Just saw it happen to Susan Sarandon. If you criticize Israel, you're not going to be invited back to the Christmas party. You might not get this movie role. Bad things will happen to you. You'll be branded an anti-Semite. And I don't know what's in Alec Baldwin's heart, but it sure seemed like he knew if he said anything negative about Israel, there would be bad things for him.
Yeah, I think maybe it's time that we really, really put the divest and, so forth against Hollywood. I think we need to go after them for creating this.
Be careful. You're starting to sound like Sean Hannity.
Yeah, well, you know what? I think that you have to really go after people that do this stuff. I think that it's important that as activists, that as people with a brain, with a heart, with some sort of ability to have an analysis of the world around them, that their stranglehold, the Zionist lobby, quite frankly, that's able to stifle free speech with threats of ending people's careers, with this kind of excommunication. It would be different if it was just Israel and Zionist type things, but we see this in academia. We see this in activism. A lot of disgraceful tone police out there sit there and stifle people for having a different opinion, for taking a different stance, and literally cancel them and cut them off. But with Alec Baldwin, this is patternistic, right? I mean, he's an asshole, period. And he's a guy who doesn't mind, hurting people. He doesn't mind screaming and yelling and whatever. I don't have a problem with people being mouthy. I have a problem with guys like him that aren't reading the room. And the idea that you're in the middle of a protest for a genocide, let's call it what it is, a genocide. And he's so aloof. He's just like, yeah, whatever. I've got actor problems. I'm going down the road. I just have a real problem with it. When there's so many people out there that kind of will give you 5 minutes of their time and then they're back to brunch. And this happened with the Joe Biden presidency, and they're doing everything they can to keep brunch front and center and ignore the real issues that are hurting people. And people are really fed up with it, man. And you see it coming out in many different ways. And this is why Joe Biden has such shitty numbers, because this brunch crew has tried everything in their power to pretend like, these things aren't happening. And the things that they do claim credit for are things that most of us don't want to hear about. We don't want to be in a proxy war with Ukraine, or on behalf of Ukraine. We don't want to be in a proxy war in Syria. We don't want to be boosting up Israeli jackbooted thugs running over Palestinians with bulldozers. We don't want that on our hands. And yet they think we do. And this is, I guess, the outcome.
The amazing thing, I mean, personally, I don't give a shit about Alec Baldwin. I mean, it got us
He's
clicks.
Symbolic of the bigger problem.
It got us clicks. So thank you for everybody who watched that video, and it's getting around on Twitter. But I don't care about Alec Baldwin, but I do find it interesting. He's asked directly, do you condemn what Israel's doing? And he says, no, but I pray for peace for Gaza. Well, don't you think the two are kind of connected, Alec? Or name your Hollywood actor, agent, athlete, politician. How are you going to get peace in Gaza if it's being bombed by the government, slaughtered, carpet bombed, whatever phrase you want to use, by the government? You're saying, no, you don't condemn. So it's just clearly there is a unwritten sacred cow in the United Corporations of America. That is, you can't criticize Israel. And I criticize the Israeli government. I'm not criticizing the Israeli people. My wife is Israeli. She's got family in Israel. I know people in Israel. I'm not, just like I wouldn't criticize all the Germans. You can't cancel or, guilt by association for the people. And there's a growing movement in Israel, particularly among young people, that want West Bank and Gaza, want Israel out of those territory, the occupied territories, and they want a Palestinian state next to in Israel. And I saw this years ago when I went there. It's particularly, there's a big generational age gap like there is in America on many issues. And in Israel, a big generational age group has to do with the younger generation. They don't want to continue. A lot of them don't want to serve. They don't want most of their defense, most of their money going to defense and, weapons and endless war. They say, give the Palestinians a country that is theirs. But it's just very illuminating. Alec Baldwin, forget his anger management problems. That one comment, no, I don't condemn them, but peace. Let me check the box. Peace for Gaza. All right, we got to move on. Smash that like button. 560 people watching. So smash the like button. Share this live stream. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe to Status Coup. We're growing. We're now at 166,000 subscribers. They got 11 days left in the year. Maybe we can get to 170,000 by the end of the year. A couple thousand new subscribers we would need. If you support this on the ground reporting, if you're new here and you don't know, we're on the ground covering these protests. We were on the ground for the first 25 days of the United Auto Workers strike. We were in Michigan and Ohio and Illinois. We've been on the ground 4 or 5 times in East Palestine, Ohio, after the Norfolk Southern detonated a fucking chemical bomb on the people of East Palestine, Ohio, who are still sick nearly a year later. It would take too long to name all the places we were at, but we've been on the ground for 5 years all over the country without a dime from corporations or the scum funding the Democratic or Republican parties, and we're funded through you. So if you're a new subscriber to the YouTube channel, consider pitching in $5 to $10 a month to help fund the coverage of the protests on the ground, coverage of labor fighting back, and all the other stories we're covering. We were in Atlanta twice covering the protests against Cop City this year. So we definitely need to grow our membership too. So please, if you can, sign up. $5 a month. That's 16 cents a day. $5 a month is 16 cents a day. $10 a month is 33 cents a day. And if you join as a member, you'll get invited to our monthly members call. We got to do one more before the end of the year. That's on Zoom. So if you sign up as a member, you will get invited to our next members call. I never forget Flint. I have been to Flint. My next trip will be 20. My next trip to Flint will be my 20th reporting trip to Flint, most of which was funded by you, the Status Coup viewer. How about that? A decade in a few months. There's still poison, still contaminated water, and no justice. Not one government official has been thrown in jail. And as it stands, it doesn't look like anyone ever will. And stay tuned for that, because my first book, will be out I believe in August.
That's
Summer
how
of
you broke your
2024.
toe.
Yes.
That's how you broke your toe.
My book on the Flint water cover-up will be out this coming summer. I wish earlier, but I'm at the mercy of the publisher. All right, let's move on. Colin, do we have a new animated graphic showcasing the neoliberal bubble popping? There we go. Love it. I might tinker with some edits, but it's a good first draft. I like that.
Yeah,
So, Steve, I don't diagnose, but we do know for certain elderly people, when they grow older or if they have early onset something, one of the symptoms is anger or hard to control their anger. I've seen it in people in my life. Well, Biden apparently, by reports, is lashing out at his staff about his low polling numbers, blaming them for the fact that he is now in pretty much every swing state losing to Trump, not by a little, but in some cases by 6 or 7 points. From the Washington Post, Biden said to be increasingly frustrated by dismal poll numbers. In one recent meeting, he said poll numbers were unacceptably low, and he wanted to know what his team and his campaign were doing about it. So you set the house on fire, and then you blame the fire department. Why haven't you put out the fire fast enough? So this is classic. The problem is not the policies I promised and abandoned. The problem is not me giving the military more money than they even asked for. The problem is not me doubling drilling on public lands when I ran on ending drilling on public lands. The problem is me not responding to a climate inferno with cooling centers. The problem is me, I could keep going down the list, abandoning a $15 minimum wage, abandoning a public option. The problem is my staff, my advisors, my campaign team, they're not as sharp as they need to be.
Yeah.
And what are we doing to fix this? And this from the New York Times headline, "This is grim," one Democratic pollster says. From November 5th through November 11th, Democracy Corps, a Democratic advisory group founded by Stan Greenberg and James Carville. So two hardcore, scummy corporate Democrats. Carville is a major disappointment. And there's not a centrist corporate Democrat he doesn't love. And there's not an actual leftist he doesn't hate. They surveyed 2,500 voters in the presidential and Senate battleground states, as well as competitive House districts. In an email, Greenberg summarized the results. "This is grim." The study, he said, found that collectively, voters in the Democratic base of Blacks, Hispanics, Asians, LGBTQ+, Gen Z, millennials, unmarried, and college women give Trump higher approval ratings than Biden. On 32 subjects ranging from abortion to China, Democracy Corps survey asked voters to choose which would be better, Biden and Democrats or Trump and Republicans. Biden and the Democrats led on only 6 of the 32 subjects: women's rights, climate change, racial inequality, healthcare. The president will not be an autocrat. That's a low bar. And he's only up by 2 points. And protecting democracy. Donald Trump and the Republicans leads on all the rest of them, including being for working people, by a 7-point advantage. Yeah, I mean, I don't even know where to start. I don't know where to start. But it seems to me that this is not just a Joe Biden issue. This, I really do believe, a bubble that's been building for 20, 30 years is starting to burst. And I look at the young people in particular. I hate to sound like an old, it's the young people. I really think the young people have finally said, I held my nose enough. I held my nose. I voted. I bought the lesser of two evils. I bought this is the most important election of our lifetime. I stood online for fucking 6-7 hours, and I'm done with it because this is the old same broken record, and I'm tired of being fed a bunch of bullshit and basically getting a slightly nicer sounded form of fascism.
Yeah, I mean, honest to God, it is when I hear anyone sing the praises of the Democratic Party, it's so faint because they don't have anything to build on. I always hear something about the NLRB. It's always about the labor board or something. The NLRB is about the only thing I ever hear anything about. Everything else is just faint praise because they got nothing. And then it just reverts to, what about Trump? It's literally immediately like that. And I think for the most part, I mean, I'm 54 years old and I won't tolerate it anymore. I won't tolerate anyone selling me their Democratic copium anymore. So I know at 54, I'm a right below the boomer zone. I'm the Gen X zone. And I know most of us, people that I talk to, are waking up, even though they're a little bit older. And so as I look at the people that are still holding on to this idea that the Democrats are the lesser of two evils, the problem isn't whether or not they're the lesser of two evils. The problem is that look at John Fetterman even. Just now, as soon as that sack of shit got elected and got out of the asylum, getting his brain fixed a little bit, and that's no slight on people going through mental illness. This guy comes
He wasn't
out,
he wasn't in the asylum. He was in the hospital. He had a stroke. But go on.
well, whatever. He came out saying he was depressed.
Right.
Came out and he was all this other stuff. So my point is that Fetterman is now saying, I'm not a progressive. I'm not. Whatever you voted for, whatever you donated to, I'm not that. And, you know, just because I had Mastriano here in Pennsylvania and listening to him literally pitting neighbor against neighbor in his ads and watching the insanity that he was advancing here in Pennsylvania, I voted for my very first and last Democrat, and that was John Fetterman. I will never do it again. I've always voted independent, and I'm never going to do it again, ever. I mean, like literally ever, not until something radically changes.
Let me give you a little behind the scenes here. I welcome new Status Coup member, GG. Welcome, welcome. Be like GG. Sign up as a Status Coup member to support our on-the-ground reporting. But let me give you a little behind the scenes here at Status Coup. I said to Colin, I said to Lewis, November 2022, I don't know. I don't really want to send anyone out to cover John Fetterman. I mean, my wife was about to give birth, so I certainly wasn't going to do it. But that was like the main Senate race where like it was kind of sort of a progressive running, but I wasn't excited about it. I didn't want to cover it because I didn't really think it was a progressive. But I said, well, we got to cover the midterms because we are a news outlet. It's kind of sort of, he's sort of the one-ish, progress-ish, if that's a word, candidate. But in my gut, I knew this guy's full of shit. They did run a good campaign, stroke and all, great social media campaign, but I knew it. And I didn't want to send, I wasn't going to go again because my wife was giving birth, but I sent Lewis. I don't really regret it, but the proof was in the pudding. I mean, we were covering it, but we couldn't really sell this guy as like, hey, this is a really important election. And if he gets elected, it's going to be a game changer for Pennsylvania, because I didn't believe it. And I don't think he's as bad as Dr. Oz. But again, you know, what's that saying? And I feel the same way about the Iowa caucus coming up. Do I really want to go or send Lewis to go cover the Iowa caucus of Trump probably winning by a lot because it's the Iowa caucus? Fuck no, I don't. Nope. And we don't have endless resources to go cover these things. But on the Fetterman thing, I think you bring up a great point. You know, I'm not saying to people never vote or like just cancel anyone and cancel all people if they have a D next to the name. But you have to actually look at what they've done and their record and who they're taking money from, and if there's any consistency. And Fetterman, there were a lot of red flags there.
Yeah, I'm telling you right now, my focus has started well, it hasn't started, it's been shifting. But my shift is completely about organizing outside of the electoral process, building dual power, creating mutual aid, creating parallel systems, and watching this system collapse on its own weight. That's my only goal, because voting in this thing only legitimizes the Fettermans, the Bidens, the Neera Tandons, the Kamala Harrises, the Buttigieg. I mean, when they start putting these people forward, you know that we're in trouble. And I want to just say something else too. When you think about these unelected regulators like Buttigieg, they go in and they act like they've got zero power. They act like they've got no ability to make an impact. Buttigieg has had chances to make impact every step along the way. He let Norfolk Southern walk. He literally, it's like, hey, the parliamentarian, basically. Every single step along the way, the Democrats have shown that it's not just them, it's the system they're in. It's everything about it is fraudulent. Everything about it leads to the same predictable outcomes, no matter who's in office.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I don't want to say in fairness, because I fucking hate people to judge, but just for an update, the U.S. did just fine Southwest Airlines $140 million a year or two late for their fuckery at the airports a year ago, but Buttigieg could have done that a year ago, not to mention gone much further. Anyway, I wanted audience to know they were just fined 140 million. Go on.
Now, in the grand scheme of things, what's 140 million?
Nothing.
It's not even toilet paper. I mean, it's unfathomable to me that we have allowed, and I guess let me back up. I understand that the idea that we've been trained from elementary school and even before that to believe in civics and going into to do our duty and vote and go to, and become a part of the system and so forth. All this stuff feels good. It's been part of our, we stand and salute the flag, and we should be doing the Sig Heil because that's what it's like. But we go through every one of these things collectively. It's a mind warping experience. It's literally abuse that they're doing to us. They're emblazoning the shit in our brains. And so when we grow up, naturally, everything that we've ever done, every show we've ever watched has told us these things. And so you got these good little people running around shaking their finger telling you, but you gotta vote, you gotta this, you gotta that. And they never stop to ask the question why. Maynard James Keenan never thought to question why. I mean, these guys are never, ever questioning why these things don't occur. I'm using MMT, not so much to tell people, let's get Medicare for all, we'll just vote for it. I'm using MMT now to show people, not only can they afford everything they're doing, all you got to do is look at what they're doing with Israel. All you got to look at is what they're doing with Ukraine. All you got to look at is what they're doing around the world. And then you realize they're not willing to take care of you. They're willing to build a fucking wall down in the South, but they're not willing to make sure that everyone has education. They're not willing to get rid of student debt. They're not willing to make the lives of Americans better. They're not willing to make anyone's life better. It's all about the rich, wealthy people. And it always has been since the dawn of time, since the great fight for independence from England. It's all been about wealth. It's never not been about wealth. And here we are now, patsies in a charade, propping up these fake candidates who, once again, when they get in office, do exactly what wealth bids them to do. They don't take care of us. So to me, all of this stuff, Fetterman, he's just the last in line for me. He was the final straw. I was already there, but that was the final time that I participated in that shit show. Going forward, it's all about building power outside.
Well, we are going to talk about building power in a few minutes. I want to play this one clip because it kind of shows you just the complete, I mean, I don't even think the iceberg's right ahead. I think they've hit the iceberg, and now there's another boat about to go down. This is a journalist on Morning Joe describing the Biden campaign, their thinking about these poll numbers. You want to talk about hopium? They are overdosing with hopium and delusions. And it's going to lead to be clear, because I know you feel this way, we could say what we want about Biden and the Democratic Party, but make no mistake, Trump, you could think he's a clown, but he is a threat. He's talking about being a dictator on day one. And he's going to lace his second administration with the Stephen Millers of the world and the evangelical lunatic Christians of the world. And he's going to make Chamber of Commerce. We're going to want Chamber of Commerce back in there, as opposed to QAnon and, the rest of the ilk. So Trump, you could call it what you want, but I don't want another Trump administration. I also don't want another Biden administration, but the Democratic Party putting forward this bullshit and this corporate weak sauce, candidate from the 1980s and Joe Biden is going to give us another Trump. It's not Bernie's fault. It's not your fault. It's not my fault. It's not our audience's fault. It's the Democratic Party's fault for running a half-conscious corpse who isn't promising to do anything for people. And even if he was, nobody would believe it because he hasn't. I mean, I think he's provided he's provided less than crimes over the last 3 years. But let's play this clip from Morning Joe, Colin.
To many outside this bubble of confidence, Biden's position looks as feeble as ever. His job approval rating is hovering below 40%, lower than any president in recent memory at this point in his first term. Many young voters appear to be revolting against him, reading his administration's support for Israel as a lack of concern for the mounting civilian death toll in Gaza. There are a slew of encouraging reports about the economy, but voters don't seem to be giving Biden any credit. Instead, they're just pissed off that everything costs a lot more than it used to. His top advisors believe that the political media complex is repeating all its mistakes of 2019 in underestimating Biden and misunderstanding just how low Trump has sunk in the voters' estimation. They're convinced Biden will rebound in popularity as the election gets closer and its stakes become apparent to the average voter.
Tell me, you look at polls over the weekend, Joe Biden's numbers are collapsing with young voters. He's doing poorly among black men. He's doing poorly among other people of color. If you look historically, the numbers, his votes support is slipping in the swing states. What is and all the while he's keeping all the people that ran his campaign in 2020 inside the White House. What does the Biden team know that nobody else knows?
Yeah, well, you've asked a good question there, but I think, this central article of faith that I heard over and over for the last 6 months, really, as I've been asking this question, which is what is the plan here, is that voters just aren't really paying attention in the way that they're going to a year from now when it actually comes time to vote, or 11 months from now. The point that I heard repeated over and over again is that once real Americans, real people who are currently not thinking about politics at all, once they lock into the fact that this is going to be another election where Donald Trump is on the ballot, everything is going to change. That's going to change for young voters.
Once real Americans, not the fake Americans being polled, once the real Americans, we're not like 2 years away. The Iowa caucus is in a few weeks. The general election is in less than a year. Yeah, maybe the masses aren't like laser focused tuned in, but most of them are aware there's a presidential election next year, and I would dare to argue more than usual already have their mind made up. Not necessarily that they're voting for Trump, but that they're going to vote third party, or they're just not going to vote. A lot of former Biden supporters, but they're delusional enough to think, oh no, it's just that voters, it hasn't been made real to them yet because it's not, right before the election. Give it some time. They'll get it. If you just put Trump versus Biden, on their dinner plate, they'll get it.
Dog whistle. Dog whistles, baby. Dog whistles. Nothing but dog whistles. That's what they're counting on. I hate Trump, but I hate Biden too. I hate the whole oligarchy. There's nothing they're presenting to me that sounds like anything that I want in my life. There's nothing they're presenting that it represents a country or a democracy or any kind of aesthetic that I would want to be a part of. Nothing about any of what either of them are saying. The only appeal to Trump, if there is such a thing, is that he makes Biden look as old and decrepit as he is. That's the only remote thing, is that he can put his thumb in their eye and make them cry and dance and twist like a little pig who you're turning their toe. That's the only thing that's even remotely attractive. And that's not presidential. That's just, I freaking can't stand these tone policing shit libs that go out there and walk around in their Ivy League schools and their Ivy League circles, looking down on everyone else and sitting there trying to control the narrative with this disgraceful, I've got a freaking mansion on the river mindset. Okay. The perfect dog, the perfect kids, the perfect everything. That ain't reality. And I think that most people right now, it's not a matter of the election's too far away. It's a matter of people are struggling so bad since student debt kicked back in. People are struggling so bad with the cost of living increases and the fact that there isn't the kind of work that they need to get out of that hole. People are doing things in their lives that have just zapped them of vitality and of any kind of happiness and joy. It's got nothing to do with whether it's Trump or Biden. It's got to do with life has become that toxic. It has become that hopeless because we literally are witnessing a theatrical production called the U.S. government that suddenly people have seen behind the curtain. They realize that the wizard is sitting back there. They realize the emperor has no clothes. And they're like, oh my God, now what do I do? There's still people out there will try to lie to you and try to make you believe that these people are really, really doing our bidding. It's just a really tough struggle. Steve, you just don't understand how hard it is to organize. You just don't understand how hard it is, Steve. And it's just a bunch of bullshit. And the problem is that when you get past that weird, spicy feeling of saying, I just don't believe my eyes anymore. I don't believe the ears. I don't believe what they're saying anymore. It just doesn't measure up. When you finally have that moment and you just say, it's bullshit. It's not nihilist. It's not saying, I want the world to burn down. It's saying, I don't believe in you. I don't believe in your message. I don't believe in this system. I don't believe what you're selling me anymore. It's not a matter of I'm nihilistic and I don't believe in anything. I believe in the proletariat. I believe in the workers. I believe in the people. I believe in us, but we are so brainwashed and propagandized that you will have somebody running around with a ruler cracking knuckles trying to bring you back into the thing. No, don't check out. Come on back over here and get back into the lie. But that lie is corroding our brains. It's killing our spirit. And it is literally taking away years of our life that we could be organizing to fight this system and fight back against what's happening. But we won't do that if we continue to suckle in, because the minute you're in electoral politics, guess what? You've lost the subject. You no longer have advocacy on your side. You now have to go with whatever that asshole is presenting to the world, their platform, what they believe, what they're pushing forward. And none of them are pushing anything forward that matters. None of it matters. It's all lies. And you saw with Joe Biden, the list of things that he ran on trying to connect with the people, even they sucked when he said them, because I remembered what Bernie had said, and then the parasites that put Joe Biden in there. This is nothing about what I wanted. And I even allowed myself to get depressed enough that I said, okay, let me hear about this $2,000 check. Never came. Let me hear about nope, never happened. And I remember, and I don't forget. See, I refuse to pretend I don't know better. I refuse to play that game. Joe Biden was presented with a federal job guarantee by Stephanie Kelton. His team said, fuck no, I'm not doing a job guarantee. They presented a Green New Deal. He said, fuck no, I'm going to do this Build Back shittier. They presented him with the Debt Collective, as you know, had a fully vetted legal document that could have been an executive order that would have held up in court to wipe out all student debt. Biden said, no, thank you. I'm going to nickel and dime it. He could have stacked the courts, didn't do it. Why didn't he do it? Because he wanted to give the Republicans a chance. Well, shit. Republicans are always on the side of capital. Democrats are always on the side of capital. We are the recipients of their bullshit. So for me, when I see all this stuff and I see Biden languishing or whatever, and when I don't, oh no, what about Trump? I say to myself, you know what? We already live in a feudal society. We already have dictators. We already have a ruling class. We are no longer just democracy of the people. There is no proletariat. We are crushed. We are absolutely, we have no one representing us. And just like you said that the lobby of Hollywood would excommunicate anyone that spoke out against Israel. Just think about anybody in politics that doesn't toe the line, that doesn't do the Democratic Party's bidding or whatever, will be excommunicated as well, because in the end, it's message discipline, this trash message discipline of keeping people on point, staying in this narrow lane, repeating only the words spoken, retweeting only the things allowed, doing only the things within this very, very narrow construct. And most people are rejecting it. Thank the fucking Lord. That's the deal. Thank God.
Great segue. I'll be quick because I know you got to go. We have more wage increases in the auto industry, particularly the non-union auto industry after the United Auto Workers strike. So that's the organizing you're talking about. This time, Elon Musk is bumping wages for Tesla workers at the big Nevada factory. Tesla has announced plans to raise pay for hourly workers about 10% at its Nevada Gigafactory after the UAW kicked off its campaign to organize non-union auto workers. UAW's recent strike resulted in pay increases of 33% for 150,000 union members. Colin, let's show that graphic of all the wage increases so far after the UAW strike. All non-union shops. Hyundai, 25% raise for workers in Alabama and Georgia. Volkswagen, 11% increase at the Tennessee assembly plant. That is the same plant that the workers are now currently organizing to join the UAW. Honda, 11% wage increase. Nissan, 10%. Toyota, 9%. Tesla in Germany, 4%. Subaru, we don't know the exact number, but they're bumping wages. And now Tesla in Nevada. To be clear, this is not all at once. This is over, in some cases it's all at once, and others it's over the contract. So 10%, let's say, over 4 years. So not anywhere near enough. Doesn't keep pace with inflation, but is a whole lot more than 0%, which is what they would have done if not for the UAW strike. So it's showing that if you actually have a return of labor militancy in this country, yeah, not everyone was in love with the new contract of the UAW. There was a healthy number of workers who voted no, but it's certainly better than the piss poor surrender of UAW and other unions of the last 20, 30 years. And the proof's in the pudding. You're now seeing significant increases that I think could be even more once these non-union shops organize to join a union like UAW. Secondly, it would have been accepted if Sean Fain and the UAW took like a holiday break. They haven't taken their foot off the gas. They just went down to Chattanooga, where Volkswagen workers are organizing right now to join the UAW. Volkswagen is non-union. This is from UAW's website. Volkswagen Workers Faith Coalition and UAW President Fain to visit Chattanooga plant to demand Volkswagen stop union busting. UAW also filed new unfair labor charges against the union busting going on with Volkswagen down in Chattanooga. As of now, the majority of workers down there want to unionize with UAW. And Volkswagen, not surprisingly, is trying every dirty trick in the book to stop that. Colin, do you have that clip of Fain down at the Chattanooga plant?
It's unfortunate that they're choosing to do this when they've agreed to neutrality, to remain neutral in this process. And again, they're not honoring their word and their commitment. And so we're going to be there every step of the way.
So he's talking about Volkswagen and their union busting when they agreed to be neutral. I got to tell you, I don't want to, be cocky or, take anything for granted. I think a lot of these non-union shops, seeing what just happened with UAW, they're going to want to organize with UAW. Whether they do or not depends on how bad the union busting is, how severely their jobs are threatened, how many layoffs happen before a vote takes place, because these companies they're going to do what Amazon did and Starbucks has done. They're going to threaten these workers' jobs, their livelihoods, their benefits. But I got to tell you, talking about stepping outside of electoral politics, this is, as far as I can tell, the one thing we've seen that is yielding results for the downtrodden, battered proletariat.
Yeah, I mean, we have to start somewhere, right? There has to be something that awakens workers' minds to the possibilities of something more. Do I like corporate unions? No, I do not. Do I like class struggle unions? Yes, I do. Do I like the fact that I'm watching unions currently setting their dates for their contracts to line up with one another to make an even bigger splash later? Absolutely. That is called class struggle unions. We are now dealing with beyond just the one, shop floor. We're dealing cross company shop floors. We're dealing with entire sectors. The opportunity to grow that into something more of a more mass movement beyond just the corporate sector is going to be vital to taking down this intensely insane neoliberal reign of terror that we've been living under. Without it, we have no chance. So do I think it's enough? What's that saying? It is necessary, but not sufficient. It is necessary, but not sufficient. And that is, a great first step, but let's not crack the champagne. We've got more work to do. There's got to be more work to do. A lot more work to do.
Steve, I have
Yes,
to
sir.
report this breaking news. And it is the antithesis of what we were talking about, but I would be derelict if I didn't report it. Colorado Supreme Court rules that Donald Trump is disqualified from serving as president under the 14th Amendment.
Oh, wow.
This was a significant case that a lot of Democrats, legal types were looking at, that if one state Supreme Court disqualifies him, which would mean he can't be on the ballot in that state, obviously there will be appeals by Trump, who's made a lifetime of appealing and delaying legal challenges, but other states would follow suit. I'll just read this here. Anderson versus Griswold, election law, 14th Amendment. In this appeal from a district court proceeding under the Colorado Election Code, the Supreme Court considers whether former President Trump may appear on the Colorado Republican presidential primary ballot in 2024. A majority of the court holds that Trump is disqualified from holding the office of president under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Because he is disqualified, it would be a wrongful act under the election code for the Colorado Secretary of State to list him as a candidate. I'm not going to even pretend to know the legalese, but I will tell you politically, this is an earthquake. MSNBC right now is streaking naked, probably on television. CNN's not far behind. It will be appealed. It probably will end up going to the Supreme Court. And I think since it's Trump's Supreme Court, they will rule in his favor, but it certainly spices things up. We'll cover that more tomorrow. Last thing on UAW, Steve. Bottom line, this doesn't have to just stop at the auto industry.
That's right.
You're seeing the bumps in the auto industry at Hyundai, Subaru, Honda, Nissan, all that. But if you got one major union standing up, being more militant, maybe the other unions, if they get their head out of the Democratic Party's ass long enough, can, regain their militancy, get rid of the dead weight and the corrupt ghouls that run a lot of these unions. Because if this is having an effect for non-union shops to raise wages in advance, preemptively, to try and stave off a union campaign, why can't we see it in healthcare? Why can't we see it teachers unions? Why can't we see it retail unions? Your thoughts?
I couldn't agree more. That is exactly what I was saying when I said class struggle unions. You got to have it across. There's nothing worse than hearing somebody talking about they're going to fight for their health care and they don't care about anyone else's health care. When these unions get together and they start lining up their contracts and they start lining up their efforts and they start becoming a block and not just segregated by company, you're going to see major change start happening. It's going to take that because that's outside of the electoral process. I can't tell people, I can't beg people enough to stop thinking that little sticker you put on your forehead for your selfie did something meaningful. It's things like what's happening with the unions right now that is the starting point. It's just the kindling for the fire. And it's time for all of us to get involved and to not just sort of mail it in, to not just sort of lead that bougie life and think, I donated at the office. I gave a few minutes of my time. This is a fight, folks. We're in a war, whether you're acknowledging it or not. And I think unions across like this, class struggle unions, are the key initial point to breaking through. I think it'll be successful? Lord only knows. I have no idea. I know that without it, it is impossible, though. That I do know. So,
speaking of fire, tell the masses, where can they find Steve Grumbine and Real Progressives?
Yes. Well, first things first, before you even put up any of the signs, please follow us on X or Twitter or whatever. Cheese Macro. Cheese Macro is our podcast. Please follow our podcast there. If you haven't already liked Cheese Macro, go out there on X and go to Cheese Macro, and please follow us there. Our podcast comes out every Saturday morning. It's called Macro and Cheese, and it's geopolitics, it's economics, it's all things wrapped into one. It's history, you name it. Please, 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 please check it out. It's audio only, so you don't have to stare at our ugly faces. You just get to hear great content. And then beginning after the first of the year, I'll be returning Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 12 noon with the Rogue Scholar. We have 2 channels. We have Real Progress in Action, which you see there, and we have Real Progressives. Both YouTube channels need your love, and they need it really bad. And, of course, you can follow me at SD Grumbine on X. Yes, sir.
Don't ask politely. Let me tell you something. 420 people, go subscribe right this minute. Open up another tab, subscribe. Real Progress in Action and Real Progressives. There's a lot of channels covering a lot of bullshit and faux infotainment and drama and food fights and this celebrity or this YouTube host, and they're all clickbait factories. Real Progress in Action, Real Progressives are covering actual substance, modern monetary theory, worker exploitation, the criminals in our government, and many other things. Subscribe. It's very important. They are independent, and they don't take money from the corporate ghouls. Go on.
One final thing. We started a Substack just so we could connect with other creators. If you are on Substack or you are a Substack creator, please follow our page with your page, and we'll reciprocate. It's Substack / I guess Real Progressive. So please come and subscribe to us. Status Coup, we're following them and they're following us. Yay, we finally made that bridge. Please, if you wouldn't mind, that would be great. That would help us connect, and it would help us get our content out there. And we're being throttled like you wouldn't believe. So your support, hugely appreciated. Jordan, thank you, sir. I got to get to dinner, brother. I'll talk to you later.
Go feed your children. Goodbye.
You got it, man. Bye-bye.
Let's read some super chats. Tony D, $4.99. Jordan, I hope you're healthy. Joe Biden will pay financial price for siding with Israel. Hey, could be a lot worse. There's people dying in Gaza and many other places. So I got 2 broken toes. I'm doing fine, relatively, and my toes will heal. Sage and Fool, $5. Genuine question. Are these innocent adult Israelis when in a draft system, each of them took a turn at guarding the prisoners? Genuine question. Are there innocent adult Israelis when in a draft system, each of them took a turn at guarding the prisoners? I guess you're talking, are the prisoners the Palestinians? Well, Sage, I don't quite think that's fair, because in a draft, you don't have a choice. So if you are an Israeli citizen, you have to be in the military. The only ones, honestly, that get out of it are the Orthodox. So when you say took a turn, that kind of implies willingly. I mean, as a citizen, they have to serve in the military. So, I mean, I would say they're innocent, just like the people that were drafted in America to serve in Vietnam and this and that, or risk arrest if they fled to Canada or this and that. So I do not think, I'm not going to sit here and blame the citizens of Israel for what their government does. New YouTube member, GG, signed up. Thank you, GG. We need to get more people signing up too. So if you support our on-the-ground, independent and on-the-ground reporting, sign up as a Status Coup member for $5 to $10 a month. That's statuscoup.com/join. Become a member today. $5 a month equals 16 cents a day. Tony, $5. I donated to Fetterman's campaign, never donating again. F that guy. He is a disappointment, I'll say that. Nadia, $10. Their job was to stop the left. Example, Bernie Sanders, not the Republicans. Racism and theocracy don't cost plutocrats anything, but social justice does. Therefore, Dems are paid to never deliver their promises. Very, very, very eloquent and accurate. Dokshe Hermans, €11. Thank you. Thank you. Really appreciate that. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll be back at it tomorrow. Definitely check out the video we posted earlier from Alec Baldwin going off and ballistic at a pro-Palestinian protester. The whole live stream, which I believe was 2.5, 3 hours, is also up under the live tab. That was from last night. John Farina covering it. We'll actually be covering live on Thursday in New York City, a UAW and union event. They'll be protesting for a ceasefire, major unions. So we'll be on the ground covering that. I believe that's at 5 o'clock Eastern. So we're continuing our on-the-ground coverage. Thank you for your support. And if you're not subscribed to this channel, make sure you subscribe right next to, right on the homepage. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.